Made with Spoken.
Strange Fruit. Zayden Storm, a.k.a. Papa Z, U9 West, Crescent region. I could feel Tango strike an attitude as soon as me and Knight made our entrance. He took one look at her, shot me the stank eye, and said, "She's stunning. Now remind me, why is she here again?" "She's a damn good pilot," I replied, "and she's got a sweet shuttle that can fit us all. If we're going to venture that far into the hinterlands, we're going to need wings." "She looks like another one of your, extracurricular activities," Tango mumbled. "Don't be an ass," I said. "She's also got the sight like nobody's business, and she's got as much of a right to be here as anybody." Tango rolled his eyes. "So you say?" I rolled mine back. Screw him if he was jealous and wanted to pout. I grabbed Knight's hand and introduced her to the rest of the crew. Sister Evita, Reginald Victory, Mother Amoret. Although they were superficially gracious, I could see they were all looking at her sideways too. "Okay, people," I demanded. "Out with it. What the hell is your problem?" "She's whiter than snow," said Mother Amoret, who was the only one in the room who had ever seen snow since she was originally from Upper Midwest, where it was omnipresent. "And she's a domer." "Not just any domer," I countered. "This here is the one and only Nightflower, famed graffiti artist and activist who's been advocating for the outside ever since I can remember." "Art's one thing," said Evita. "Flying to a forbidden zone that's probably rated D6+ is another." That's when Knight decided she'd had enough of being talked about like she was invisible. She unzipped the right arm of her has-suit, baring her forearm, decorated with some of the sweetest ink I've ever seen. "Oh, come on," she shouted. "You all have the sight. Why don't you fucking read me? Know my gifts. Know my heart." For a while, all of them just sat there, stunned that such a luminously pale wisp of a woman could make such a loud noise. I just smiled to myself. I hadn't known Knight for long, but I knew you didn't underestimate her. She wasn't your usual do-good domer dilettante with a guilty conscience. She was the real deal. Surprisingly, it was Tango who took up her offer to do a reading. He figured he might as well get to know the competition, although truthfully, Knight and I hadn't done anything, yet. Knight was the one who approached me. I was hanging in the back room of Christie's at a table by myself when I noticed this gorgeous pale woman clad in a skin-tight aqua blue, high-end has-suit walking towards me. She stuck out like a sore thumb. You don't see many primo has-suits in the back room of Christie's. That got my guard up. I figured she was some domer girl slumming it, maybe some sorority pledge out on an initiation scavenger hunt. Find some deep outside stud and screw his brains out. Post pics. It was the season. Instead, she walked up to me, removed her gloves, and slapped her hands palms up on the table. "Read me," she thought. "Huh," I thought back. "Impressive. You have the sight. And you're strong enough to send and receive thoughts without touch." I read her and determined she wasn't a threat. "My name's Nightflower," she said as she sat down. Her voice was surprisingly deep, so much so, I briefly wondered if she might be a man, or even in between. Either way, it didn't matter, because like Tango said, she was stunning. Her eyes were lavender. At first I wondered if she was wearing contacts, but then decided she wasn't. Although she was quite aware of her good looks and not afraid to use them, she didn't strike me as the type keen on artificial beauty aids. "May I buy you a drink?" she asked, then smiled. "A tall blue sky, perhaps?" I chuckled. "Really? A nice domer girl like you came all the way to the deep outside for some booty?" "No, I've been looking for you for a while," she said. "You're Papa Z or Zayden Storm, right?" You turned down Lillian Ruby to his face. I had been leaning back in my chair, but that got me bolt upright. As far as I knew, no one except me, Tango, and my now estranged mother knew about me turning down a job offer from Ruby Biotech just before I graduated high school. The company had been eyeing me since I won first prize in the Crescent Regional Science and Engineering Fair back in junior high. They offered me a sweet deal, I guess. They'd pay for my education anywhere in the world through graduate school. In turn, they would own my butt until my early 30s. I would have earned enough credits to live in the dome and travel outside the Crescent and beyond. But when you're 17, someone owning your butt until your 30s is frightening. Plus, I dreamed on it, and something about the deal still didn't feel right, so I politely declined. I'd interviewed with Ruby Biotech's number 2, David Grove, and after he offered me the job, he gave me this business card with a private number on it so I could inform the company of my decision. I thought it was David Grove's private number, But no, the call went straight to the big man himself. And when I turned him down, Dr. Ruby just laughed and said he knew I wouldn't sign. He did tell me we'd work together one day, though, so I didn't really feel bad about making what might have been the biggest mistake in my short life. Mama, however, begged to differ. She threw me out of the house after graduation, which is how I wound up living with Tango. But how did Knight know about all this? Uncle Lily told me, she thought to me. Uncle Lily? I blurted aloud, and a few people turned to stare. You mean you know the boy wonder of the bayou personally? Yeah, I used to play in his house when I was little. For some reason, I imagined her playing in the Ruby Biotech Tower inside the dome, although Dr. Ruby never struck me as the type who would sleep in his office. Apparently, she caught a glimpse of what was in my mind's eye. No, silly, she thought, giggling. Not there. I mean in his actual house. He does live in a real house, you know. I know, I said aloud. It's just that hero worship does strange things to your brain. Yeah, she agreed. I mean, I know him, and sometimes I find it hard to believe he's a flesh and blood human being. What's he like? I asked. He's cool, probably cooler than you imagine. Why have you been looking for me? I hear you run a little salon to discuss matters beyond the veil. I immediately set her straight. I don't run it. I'm just a member, and I haven't been that for long. Could you get me in? She asked. Yeah, I could, but what? She pestered. But why? I shot back. You're obviously part of the Domer elite. Why do you want to crash some salon full of deep outside witches? I hear you're exploring paranatural forms of protest, casting spells for the oppressed. How do I know you're not some sexy Domer spy? I asked. I'm sure she thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. So you think I'm sexy, huh? She leaned across the table and blinked those big lavender eyes at me, like she thought I'd be that easy. I shrugged. Yeah, I think you're hot. But so do you. Seriously, what gives? She straightened right up and threw back her shoulders. I'm truly interested, and as you can imagine, there are not many people with whom I can discuss such things in the dome. Now, there was fire in those lavender eyes. She was serious. Why would you want to protest your own kind? I asked. There aren't many who would sacrifice themselves, even for the good. The system is wrong, and I owe a great debt to someone. Suddenly, I found it hard to breathe. That last sentence she sent weighed a ton. I mean, it felt like she'd thrown an anvil on my chest. I wondered, to whom did she owe that debt? So will you put in a word for me? She was pleading now, like I was her priest and she was desperate for absolution. I thought if I said no, she might die right then and there. And no, it wasn't an act. She read true. Okay, I thought to her. So what skills do you have to offer? What's your superpower? I'm a healer, and I've got a first-class pilot's license and a couple of my own shuttles. I'm also an artist and activist. I started the Dome Youth Volunteer Corps when I was a teenager. Well, I'm not promising anything, because frankly, I'm not sure how the group will take to you. Sure, you're aesthetically pleasing and you've got mad gifts. But you're also a domer, you're white as a sheet, and you've got way too many credits to burn. That makes you hard to trust. We've been duped so many times before. She lowered her eyes. Fine, she said aloud. I'll wait for your word. Silence, but at least the air between us lightened a bit, signaling that uncomfortable business was over. Do you still want to buy me a drink? I asked, smiling. She flashed those lavender eyes at me again. Sure. What are you drinking? Coffee, I replied. I've got a long night ahead, a lot of code to write. Legal? She asked. Technically. It pays well and I could use the credits since I ain't making those big Ruby biotech bucks. She laughed, then waved over a waitress and ordered something called Black Brazilian Thunder, which I'd seen on the menu, but never had the guts to order before. She ordered one for herself, too. I will be able to sleep eventually, right? I asked. Yeah, sure. Frankly, the name's scarier than the beverage. Our coffee arrived, piping hot, strong, rich, and sweet. We talked some more, then left Christie's. She had her shuttle parked outside, so she drove me home. Since she had a tunnel pass, it took all of 15 minutes. The ferry would have taken at least an hour. Tango wasn't home, so I invited her inside, but made it clear I had work to do, and there'd be no hanky-panky. She was okay with that. She said she had her own work. She drew while I coded, and it was nice having someone around, even if we weren't talking. Even though Tango and I were partners, we spent a lot of time apart. Tango ran a business, and I scrounged for paying gigs all over. It made for some odd hours. From then on, Knight and I ran into each other accidentally on purpose at various bars and clubs in the 10 zones. We danced, talked politics, and once she took me flying just to prove to me she could do it. Every time we met, she asked about coming to the salon. She wasn't pesky about it. She'd usually just ask once and be done with it. I liked that about her. Persistent, but not a pain in the ass. I figured the best time to spring her on the group was when the group needed her special skills. We were headed on a ghost hunting expedition in the deep hinterlands in the former state of Mississippi, someplace reachable only by shuttle. I hadn't seen her larger vessel, but I'd seen her navigate through the thick crescent mist using only her sensors and her wits. Night was fearless, and that's what we needed. Tango held on to Night's arm for what felt like ages before finally pulling away and announcing she was legit. The room softened a tiny bit, but not much. Mother Amoret was still scowling, and Night had to pass muster with her before she was truly in. Mother Amoret was the elder and had seen countless well-meaning Domer allies come and go. "I think I've seen you on the ferry," she said. "Always sitting by yourself sketching us like we were figure models for your amusement." Night opened her mouth to defend herself, but Tango spoke up first. "She ain't drawing us for her art project. If she draws you, she means to heal you." Night's jaw nearly dropped to the floor. She had no idea just how deep his reading had gone. Reading people is Tango's superpower, I thought to her. You'd be well advised not to fuck with him. Noted, Night quickly thought back. Meanwhile, Mother Amoret was circling Night like a vulture. Mother Amoret was a mountain of a woman, 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Night looked like a frail white hummingbird next to her. "Is this true?" asked Mother Amoret. "Can you heal people just by drawing them?" "Sometimes," Night replied, "but not always. It depends on how deep the illness has gone. If it's gone too deep, I have to touch them." "Touch them how? Are we talking laying on of hands?" A wisp of a smile came to Night's face. "Well, I suppose laying on of hands would work, but I prefer sex. It's much more efficient and pleasurable for all parties involved." Mother Amoret gave one last mighty scowl, then busted out laughing. "Hot damn, I like her," she declared. And that was good. All the tension in the room was starting to give me a headache. Night visibly relaxed. "So where do you need me to fly?" "To the lost city of Natchez, Mississippi," Evita replied. Night fiddled with her watch for a bit, then stretched out her arm to project a map of Crescent region and the surrounding hinterlands onto the floor. "Show me where Natchez, Mississippi used to be," she said, and a red light started blinking about 200 miles northeast beyond the border of the 10th zone. She shook her head. "Man, that's deep," she sighed. "I don't think anyone's been that far into the hinterlands in a long, long time." "Do you think you can get us there?" asked Reginald Victory. "And if you can't just say so, don't be a hero." "Show current weather," Night said, and the map transformed into a high-res 3D map, complete with thick, grayish-green clouds of mist overhead. The quality of tech she owned was impressive. Tango was even drooling, and he sold the stuff for a living. Night placed her free hand on her hip. "I've flown through some thick mist before, but..." She paused to point at a particularly thick patch of mist near our desired destination, so thick it appeared nearly solid. "I've never flown through shit like that, although I'm willing to try. Warning though, I'd be flying totally by sensor, and it'll be a bumpy ride. Bring your own barf bags, because even if you've never been airsick before, I guarantee you will be." Stunned silence. Maybe Night was a little too honest. "Why do you want to fly to the far reaches of the hinterlands anyway?" Night asked. "There treasure out there or something?" "That's one of the legends about the place," said Mother Amoret. "But that's not what interests us. We're looking for a place called the Devil's Punch Bowl." "Well, the entirety of the Crescent Hinterlands is Satan's armpit," quipped Night. That got a brief giggle from Reginald Victory. Mother Amoret shot him the stank eye to shut him up. "The Devil's Punch Bowl was a post-Civil War concentration camp for freed slaves," she explained. "Once the slaves were let loose from the plantations, many of them started to make their way up north, hoping for a better life. A whole mess of them passed through the former Natchez, so many that the town's population swelled to over 100,000 overnight. Of course," she continued, "that was unacceptable, so the Union Army corralled them in these deep valleys by the Mississippi. They separated out the men and had them doing hard labor. Women and children were left to starve and die. And die they did. Men, women, and children. Of starvation, of smallpox, of cholera, of hopelessness. They suffered so much. Some of them tried to go back to the plantations, figuring this new hell was 100-fold worse than the old one, but those union fuckers wouldn't let them leave. And keep in mind, these are the folks we were taught were the good guys. Anyway, Mother Amoret concluded, when the people died, they didn't get a proper burial. They just were buried where they dropped. Some say as many as 20,000 died there. It's just one mass grave. Crap, Knight exclaimed. I mean, I'm all about extreme travel, but why do you want to go there? The place is probably haunted as hell. A whole lot of violent death near water, an army of hungry ghosts. Honey, said Mother Amoret, that's precisely why I want to go. Rumor has it that wild peaches grow there, but no one will eat them because they're cursed. I want some of those peaches. I want some of the seeds. I want to let these hungry ghosts finally have their vengeance. On the dome. Does anything actually grow in the hinterlands? Knight asked. Truthfully, I replied, we really don't know. As far as I know, no human has been where we're going in at least 50 years. But in my experience, once humans leave, nature takes over fairly quickly. Even abandoned sites like Chernobyl are surprisingly lush, but they are still toxic and haunted. How's everyone for Haz suits? Knight asked the room. They need to be top of the line and in good repair. If anyone's lacking, I'm willing to donate. Geez, Ms. Knight, said Tango, you must really want in. I do, she confirmed. And what the hell are credits for if you can't spend them? So you will fly us? Asked Mother Amoret. Yes, now may I ask one question? Shoot, Firefly. How are you going to curse the whole dome? Frankly, I'm not sure of the spell, confessed Mother Amoret. In fact, I'm not sure if what I have in mind is possible. I may be grasping at straws. It depends on what energy I find at the site and whether it's useful. I mean, that whole Devil's Punch Bowl thing might turn out to be a myth. She eyed the thick mist on Knight's 3D map. We may not even get to our destination. I mean, why curse and not protest? Mother Amoret threw her head back and laughed like Knight had told the best joke she'd ever heard. Since when has protesting done any good? I mean, it may do a little good for a little while. Baby steps here and there. Better decon stations. A few more ferry stops. Maybe a few well-placed donations by a few bleeding heart barons. But those are just Band-Aids. I want deep change, soul-churning stuff. For that, you've got to go beyond politics and policy. You have to do the impossible. Go beyond the veil. Confer with the ancestors. Invite the ancient ones in. We deep outsiders aren't crazy or superstitious, she continued. Certainly there are domers born with the sight who can perceive beyond the obvious. Those are the hearts I'm trying to reach. With a curse? Asked Knight. You can't raise consciousness without a dark night of the soul. Domers will never understand the outside unless they suffer like we do, unless they are made to live every day constantly aware of death's icy stare. Tell me, Ms. Knight, who was the last of your Domer friends to die of an environmental cancer? No one. Well then, said Mother Amoret, and that was that. She was done explaining herself. Frankly, I was surprised she deigned to explain herself at all. Knight said she'd keep an eye on the weather reports and report back with possible launch dates. There was some more chit-chat, and after that, the meeting started to break up. Sister Evita left for work at the hospital. Mother Amoret had to babysit her grandkids. Reginald Victory had errands to run, which left me, Tango, and Knight awkwardly staring at each other. Is this a date night for you two, or can I hang? Asked Knight. Date night, Tango blurted, and I just glared at him. I knew he was jealous, but he didn't have to be rude. I was about to apologize when Knight held up her hands in mock surrender. Listen, man, I don't want to start nothing. I'll just leave. Catch you later, Z. Since we weren't far from the house, and the mist wasn't too thick, Tango and I decided to walk home. What the hell was that about? I asked Tango. So what if I'm attracted to her? I got enough sense not to fuck her in front of you. It ain't that, Z, Tango said. Then what the hell is it? When I read her, I saw some things. His voice trailed off, and I started getting pissed. I hate it when he went all mysterious on me. What things? I prodded. Is she a Domer spy? Hell no, far from it. She wants change, radical change. She thirsts for it. But you know how I'm always saying there are two reasons for wanting revolution? Yeah. He expounded on that theory often. Some people want change because they sincerely want better lives for everyone. Others want change because they seek revenge against a world they feel has wronged them. Most activists have a mix of the two motives, but hopefully the more positive one wins out. Because revolution fueled by vengeance only brings its opposite, devolution, in the end. You think she's primarily out for vengeance? I asked. She has a real deep-seated anger, Tango replied. More than Amoret? Yeah, if you can believe that. Oh, and about that gift. Her ability to heal people by drawing them? It cuts both ways. She can also make you ill. She can even kill you. Has she killed anyone? Yes. I couldn't catch who it was because that's when she cut me off, but it was when she was young and just growing into her power. She cut you off? Seriously, that surprised me. Night had seemed so desperate to prove herself. I thought she'd made herself an open book. Know my gifts, know my heart. Yeah, she definitely knows how to defend herself against a psychic attack, Tango said. Someone taught her well. Someone way more powerful than you or me. So if she knows someone that powerful, I asked, what's her interest in me? Tango rolled his eyes. Other than the obvious? No, seriously, she sought me out, and she knows about my brief history with Ruby Biotech. Tango just laughed. Well, I'm certain she's not the only domer who knows about that. Not many people say no to Lily and Ruby. I'm sure he told more folks about that phone call than you think. Now I was just getting annoyed. Tango, damn it, I snapped. Is there something you're not telling me? Okay. She came to you because she'd heard about the salon, but mostly she's attracted to your power. She's looking for a partner in crime and thinks you're a good match, and she thinks she owes you something. Damn. No wonder why that thought hit me like a ton of bricks. Owes me what? I don't know, Tango replied. Like I said, she threw up one hell of a firewall. Then he abruptly stopped walking and squeezed my shoulder. Look, man, he said solemnly, do what you want. I don't really give a rat's ass whether you sleep with her or not. We've both done our share of playing around, and we haven't lost track of where home is. But please, please be careful. I'm just looking out for you like you've always done for me. It was true. I had looked out for him. Ever since junior high, back when he was a beautiful, chubby boy who wore flawless makeup, I'd been his protector. And since high school, we'd been a couple. Through thick and thin, I'd been his North Star. Now he was strong enough to return the favor. I'll be careful, I promised. The Great Devil's Punch Bowl Haunted Peach expedition didn't take off until nearly a month and a half later. Night kept checking for a break in the weather, but the hinterland mist remained thick enough to chew until almost late July. Of course, by then it was hot as blazes with daytime temps hovering around 110 degrees. No matter when we traveled, it was going to be a shit show. Mother Amoret finally called it now or never. We allowed a full week for the trip. Though our destination was only about 200 miles away, we had no idea where we were going since no one had been there in 50 years. We knew the Mississippi River flowed near, but it was toxic. We knew there used to be deep ravines in the area and maybe some poisonous snakes, but we didn't know if any human-built structures were still standing. We might as well have been venturing to another planet, which made sense because we were dressed like mid-20th century astronauts. Night hooked us up with some industrial-strength haz suits that were better than the gear Dome Public Safety wore, maybe even better than the stuff Ruby Biotech people wore when they ventured into a hot zone. Of course, this meant they were bulky as hell and far from discreet. Even though our meeting place was far from the madding crowd in the dead of night, the few people who saw us eyed us suspiciously. They probably wondered what new environmental disaster Dome Public Safety was trying to cover up now. It was a good thing Night sprung for those suits, because we had to trudge almost 2 miles through the 10th zone to get to where she'd parked her shuttle. Now officially, no one lived in the 10th zone because it was too toxic, but officially and actually are two different things. People did live there, just not anyone you'd want to know. Fortunately, everyone in our party knew their way around a laser pistol. When I finally saw Night's ride, I was floored. Being a poor boy from the upper 9th, I hadn't seen many commercial-class shuttles in my lifetime, but I'm sure her shuttle was 10 times better. Jesus, this woman was loaded. Industrial-grade haz suits for a party of 6, and now this? Holy crap, exclaimed Reginald Victory. This is yours? Yeah, Night replied, shrugging her shoulders like it was no big deal, like everybody in the world had their own commercial-class shuttle lying around. After we finished gawking like a bunch of starstruck idiots, we climbed in. The shuttle might have been spacious if we'd been dressed for a normal trip, but between our bulky suits and gear, it was fairly cramped. Night reviewed our route, then told us to strap ourselves in good, because it was going to be a bumpy ride. Mother Amoret insisted upon a pre-flight prayer, and when we all joined hands, I felt everyone's heart beat through my fingers. Though everyone was playing cool, it was plain to feel we are all scared shitless. Sister Ursuli, I prayed. Bless my journey. Night wasn't fibbing about air sickness. Almost as soon as we left the Crescent proper, most of us were hunched over our respective receptacles. I've never ridden a roller coaster except in VR, but I'm sure that flight had to be 10 times worse. Even Night had to set the shuttle on autopilot a couple of times so she could take care of business, and she had done this before. And the sad thing was, we were just inching along. Part of the reason was because we were flying rogue. Part of it was because the mist was some of the worst I've ever seen. And I suspect part of it was because Night was taking her sweet time, because she didn't know what we would find once we reached our destination. Hell, I wasn't sure there was a destination to get to. Eventually, I felt well enough to go sit beside her at the controls. Tango was too sick to give me the stank eye. There was nothing to see out of the window except thick churning clouds of mist. It reminded me of some of the photos of Jupiter I'd seen back in elementary school. Psychedelic hurricanes bigger than Earth. So, I thought to her, do you think we're going to make it in one piece? She turned and smiled. Sure, Z. Her confidence was both reassuring and terrifying. If we find this devil's punch bowl, what do you plan to do there? Just then, the shuttle lurched sharply towards the right. Night's fingers flew across the screen and the ship righted itself. I'll probably just read the place like Mother Amoret. You planning on casting a spell of your own? She smiled again. This time she was flirting with me. You could say that. I'm just doing research. Research, I echoed, frowning. Does this have anything to do with that debt you owe? She froze, and I thought I actually heard a door slam in her mind. You mentioned some kind of debt in Christie's when we first met. I don't want to talk about that, she said aloud. I was making her nervous. You know, I could crack that devious mind of yours open like a walnut and find out for myself, I thought. Not if you know what's good for you, she said. I grabbed her arm. Is that a threat, Missy? Why don't you try it and find out? I let her go. Yeah, I probably could have cracked her mind open, but that would have pissed her off royally, and she was my ride. I could fake my way around a shuttle, but I didn't have a license, and I'd never fooled with anything close to hers. Plus, getting me and my friends stranded in the middle of the hinterlands wouldn't be a smart move. I thought to her, I don't know what you're hiding, yet, but it better not be something that puts my friends in danger. She snorted. I could hear her cackling like a cheap horror movie witch inside her head. You're already in danger. You're flying to a fucking forbidden zone. I mean, more danger than we signed up for. She turned from me and pretended to be completely absorbed in the patterns in the churning mist outside. I figured the sun must have been rising because the colors were becoming more vibrant. What I'm planning has nothing to do with you, she thought. Fat fucking chance. We hardly spoke for the rest of the trip, though I did hang close because I found staring at the mist strangely comforting, like getting toked up and staring at an old-style screensaver like I used to do in junior high. Eventually, I slumped over in my chair and fell asleep. I awoke with a start nearly 5 hours later while the shuttle was in a steep descent. Night was hunched over the controls, watching her meters like her life depended on it, which it did. I scanned the rest of the ship. Everyone was still hunched over their receptacles, except for Tango, but he wasn't looking too good, and I could feel the contents of my stomach slowly making its way up my throat. So I thought tonight, are we there yet? Believe it or not, she actually laughed at my weak-ass joke. Yeah, we're right above it. I'm trying to find a good place to land. Anything I could do to help? Yeah, keep an eye on the controls while I go take care of business. We both knew what that meant. So far, Night had been the least sick of us all, but I suspected she'd been holding a lot in. We traded seats, which was harder than it sounds, because at that point the shuttle was leaning sideways and moving was treacherous. What should I watch for? She pointed towards 1 meter flashing rapidly decreasing numbers in neon green. Keep a watch on that. As soon as it gets in the red, push this button. The tech will do the rest. Why wait until it goes in the red, I asked. Trust me, she thought. I had a million other questions I could have asked, but Night was starting to look greener than a piece of moldy cheese. So I kept an eye on the numbers while she threw up bile. The numbers went red in less than a minute. I pushed the button, and the shuttle seemed to hold its breath for a second before pitching sharply in the other direction. Jesus fucking Christ, swore Reginald Victory. I looked at the screen. The mist was clearing and I could make out something that looked like dry land. We were landing. We had made it. Night looked up from her receptacle. She looked as relieved as I felt as the craft gently touched down. You're a good co-pilot, she said wearily. It was strange to hear her speaking voice after trading thoughts back and forth. "Thanks," I said. "I didn't do much." "You did enough," she said. It took a beat for everyone to realize we had finally arrived. It hadn't been the smoothest flight, and I certainly felt the ghost of motion long after the shuttle had landed. While the rest of us stretched and tidied ourselves up a bit, Knight checked the environmental conditions outside on her monitors. From what I could see through the screen, we'd landed in a lush tropical paradise. Green everywhere, mostly a mutant variety of kudzu, with giant leaves shaped like jagged stars. But looks could be deceiving. Mother Amoret might have been one of the sickest while we were in flight, but once we were on terra firma, she was the first to recover and start asking questions. "So, Ms. Knight, what's it like out there?" "Outside temp, 110 degrees, primary contaminants, ozone, petroleum byproducts, lead, low to medium level radiation," Knight reported. "Radiation?" said Tango, surprised. "I don't recall there being anything nuclear around here." "Doesn't matter," Amoret said. "You know the amount of illegal dumping is directly proportional to an area's toxicity rating. You don't know half the stuff that's in the 10th zone." "Truth," I agreed, and everyone on board nodded their assent. "So, Sister Amoret," asked Evita, "how long do you plan to stay?" "Depends," Mother Amoret replied. She turned to Knight. "How long do you think it's safe?" "It's far from safe," replied Knight. "Like I've said, I've done some extreme travel, and this junket takes the cake. But I'll tell you what I've got as far as supplies. 2 emergency shelters that can hold 2 people apiece. They're the highest quality available, and they should last you at least a few days. They'll take less than an hour to set up. The ground, at least in this immediate area, reads solid enough to hold us. I've got food for 2 weeks." "But if the tents will only hold 2 people, where's the other 2 going to stay?" asked Reginald Victory. "I'm staying with my shuttle, and someone," Knight glanced in my direction, "can stay with me." "How far are we from the former Natchez?" asked Mother Amoret. "According to the sensors, we're smack dab on top of it," Knight replied. Amoret closed her eyes and sent up a quick prayer. "Okay," she announced after a pregnant silence. "Gear up. We go out in 20. First, we set up shelter, then we go exploring. We have 24 hours. No need of staying to the limit. We either find what we want or not." She then assigned us our lodging arrangements. Evita and Reginald Victory in one shelter, she and Tango in another, and me and Knight on the shuttle, which is exactly how I would have called it. But since Amoret did it for me, Tango didn't pout. We hit the great outdoors in less than 20, because truthfully, we had never fully geared down. And as soon as we disembarked, I realized why even the best Haz suit I owned, and I owned some decent ones, wouldn't have cut it in the deep hinterlands. Not only was it hot as blazes, the air, even with my suit's filter running at full blast, seemed completely bereft of oxygen. By the time we'd set up the shelters, I felt like I'd run a couple of marathons. Tango looked like he was about to faint. Still, despite the place being hell on earth, it was oddly beautiful. Green everywhere, with liberal pops of fluorescent color. Cicadas furiously buzzing in the background. I even heard the sound of rushing water, which I assumed was the mighty Mississippi. Seems the only time I heard rushing water in the Crescent was during monsoon season, when water flooded the streets. Otherwise, it just sat there and festered. But even though the place looked like a new Eden on the surface, things seemed off when you got up close. Like the mutant kudzu I mentioned? I wasn't kidding. It really was mutant kudzu. And the vibrant flowers I saw, none of them were right. The petals were distorted, or they were missing pieces. Not to mention that ant or praying mantis thing that crawled over my boot. And though I heard a cacophony of cicadas, I heard no birds. We set up a meeting time and split up 2 by 2 by 2. Our suits were all connected to Knight's private network just in case any of us got into trouble. I stuck close to Knight, even though I really wanted to be with Mother Amoret when she started reading the place in earnest. Something about Knight was unsettling me. I'm sure as an elite domer, she was used to buying herself into places. But when I calculated the cost of her shuttle, our suits, the emergency shelters, and our food, it seemed too rich a bribe for what we had to offer. Even for someone who had so many credits, everything was basically free. What did this trip mean to her? She knew I was acting as her babysitter and said as much. "So you keeping an eye on me?" "You could say that," I said. "Amoret wants you to," she said. "That too," I acknowledged. "She probably heard us talking on the way here." Knight stopped in her tracks for a moment. but I was careful not to say anything out loud. "Oh, my dear naive rich girl," I teased. "You're so used to hanging in the dome where most are dead of spirit. On the outside, if you have the sight, you learn to keep your antennas up and listening, since it may mean the difference between life and death." Mother Amaret's head might have been in a bucket, but I assure you she was aware. Knight didn't have anything to say to that, and me calling her dear naive rich girl pissed her off. So we walked about a half hour in complete silence, which was fine with me because it gave me the opportunity to get a feel for the place, which so far felt like nothing like I had expected. I had imagined a full spectrum haunting with stunning visuals and peach-throwing poltergeists. Instead, the place felt suspiciously inert. "You know," Knight mused, "I haven't seen any small animals around. I mean, like a squirrel, a mouse, or a snake." "Yeah," I concurred. "I haven't seen anything other than insects around." Of course, as soon as I said that, a two-headed black snake slithered out from the underbrush. I waited while it went its merry way. "How much radiation did you say was out here again?" "It wasn't much, but someone definitely dumped some shit here." "Yeah, because this whole place is like the gods tried to remake Eden from memory, but their neurons were out of whack." That's when Knight punched me in the arm. "Look, Z." She pointed at a concrete dome on top of a steep hill. It looked like a scale model of Crescent Dome, probably a workers' shelter left over from when they still thought the deep hinterlands could be saved. I didn't see how we were going to get to it, as we would have to climb almost straight up, and even if we did manage to reach it, I didn't relish trying to get back down. But I could tell by the mischievous glint in Knight's lavender eyes that she wanted to try. "Oh crap," I thought. "I thought you were quite the athlete in high school," she teased. Jesus Christ. How did she know that? In all of our accidental on purpose meetings, the subject of high school athletics had never come up. Maybe Uncle Lily told her. I was a baller, not a rock climber. Touché, and she started climbing. Fuck you, I thought, and followed her up. Actually, getting up there wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be, as it took us less than 15 minutes. I guess my body was getting used to the lack of oxygen. The shelter looked like it could hold maybe 3 or 4 adults comfortably. There was an electronic lock on the front door, but no way for me to easily hack it, since it was a biometric lock. Not that I was keen on hacking it anyway, it because something in or around that shelter was giving me a serious case of the spooks. That's when I remembered those fancy has-suits Knight had gifted us with, came with X-ray vision. There was no need for me to waste brain power trying to hack an impossible lock. X-ray view, I said. My visor obliged, and the cause of my unease became instantly obvious. Inside the shelter was a pile of bones, human bones. Way too many bones for 3 unlucky hazmat workers who got trapped inside a shelter. Knight, I called, but she had wandered out of earshot. Either that or she was deliberately ignoring me. Screw you. I slid to the ground, which probably wasn't the wisest thing to do in a D6+ zone, but I figured Knight's world-class decon would take care of it. Besides, I was suddenly beat. Show me my party's location, I said, and my visor showed 6 blinking dots clustered in a corner. We really weren't far from each other, even though it felt like we were. Knight was approximately 20 feet away from me. Tango and Amoret were about 100 feet away in a valley somewhere. Evita and Reginald were 100 feet away in the opposite direction. I was far from alone. So why did I feel as if I were dangling from the edge of the universe? I figured it must have something to do with all those bones I was leaning against. I decided to read the shelter, even though Mother Amoret cautioned us against reading a totally unfamiliar object on our own. But I wasn't alone, I convinced myself. My friends were near. I did study up on my deep hinterlands history before the trip. The area had become D6+ due to a string of industrial accidents. The most recent accident was a gas explosion about 55 years ago. A construction crew was laying some pipe, a random spark flew, and boom, a massive fireball erupted. 10 workers were instantly incinerated. Several more were injured. There were investigations, lawsuits, and recriminations, but eventually the area was declared a total loss and abandoned. Still, the dome-like shelter seemed like it was built way more recently than a half a century ago. Someone had been here since. Why? What were they looking for? I removed my right outer glove and placed my right hand on the shelter. Then I closed my eyes, opened myself, and waited. I prayed the bones would speak quickly since I figured I had at most a half hour before my right hand was toast. The bones did not disappoint. Almost as soon as I asked them to reveal their secrets, my soul was flooded with images. Only the bones didn't tell me their story. They told the story of the person who'd put them there. There was an expedition. I saw a spry older woman with a shaved head trekking through the toxic jungle with 3 younger hikers. 2 men, 1 woman. I recognized the older woman immediately. She was Marta Anderson, rogue anthropologist and environmental activist, a fixture on any elementary school history site that was worth its salt. Anderson's deal was that she'd stop damaging development or get much-needed environmental rehabilitation services by proving sites were historically significant. Like some company would want to build a pipeline under a vacant lot, and Anderson would come in and say, "No, you can't do that, because under this lot is an ancient native burial site." And the company would say, "That's bull-tinky," and Anderson would say, "Hold my beer, I'll prove it." Then she'd come in with her band of graduate students and state-of-the-art proprietary equipment, most of which she'd designed herself. And damn if she didn't dig up proof. Along the way, she'd make some stupendous finds. Fossils of previously unknown species, artifacts from the Bronze Age. Officially, no one knows how she did it, but I think she had the site. So Anderson's crew had been here after the site had been abandoned, which was unusual. Had she visited the site before the pipeline started? Had this been one of those rare cases Anderson lost? I saw a fire, not a disaster fire, but a ritual bonfire. Anderson and her party each brought a pile of bones to place around it. The scene was macabre for sure, but I also sensed their intentions, and they were beautiful. The group encircled the bones, held hands, and began softly chanting, lulling all those restless souls to sleep. So that's why the place didn't feel as haunted as I would have thought. Someone had come before us to try to appease as many of those hungry ghosts as possible, and to give at least some of those bones a proper burial. But why had Marta and her crew risked their lives visiting a toxic abandoned site? Even if they did manage to secure land rehab funding, there was no way the site could be saved. Had they come to put the souls to rest simply because it was the right thing to do? Oh, Marta, I thought, smiling, you were so damn cool. And then, night shook me out of my trance. "Hey Z," she said, "look at what I found." She held out 3 misshapen wild peaches in her hand. It took a beat for my consciousness to swim back to the surface. I found my outer glove and put it back on. "What do you plan to do with those?" I asked. "Take them back to the shuttle with me," she sassily replied. "Knight, you can't eat those. If you can sit on the toxic ground and take your glove off, I can risk a nibble." "What were you doing anyway?" "Getting a read on this shelter. It's full of bones." Knight sucked in her breath. "Damn, that's harsh." "Marta Anderson and her crew were here," I said. "You mean that anthropologist who had a knack for finding artifacts in the oddest places?" "The odd thing is, they came here after the disaster to gather as many old bones as they could and give them a proper burial. They didn't come in the name of science at all. They must have known the land was a total loss." Knight dropped the mutant peaches into the long pocket in her suit's leg. Now her right leg looked like it was growing a tumor. So why did they risk their health over some old bones? Don't know. Maybe the accident kicked something loose besides physical poison. Maybe it tore a hole in the veil and something snuck through. Just then, I heard a ding in my ear. It was time to start heading back to the shuttle. Knight, of course, heard it too. I stood up, brushed myself off, and walked back to look down the hill we had climbed. We'd both have to be careful if we didn't want to twist an ankle or worse. I scanned the area for tree branches that looked sturdy enough to serve as walking sticks. It wasn't all that easy because much of the forest was smothered in mutant kudzu, but I spotted 2 likely candidates not far away and shot them off with my laser pistol. They fell to the ground with a thud. "You're an excellent shot," Knight said, as I handed her a gnarled branch almost as tall as she was. I shrugged. I didn't have any time to waste. I had to make it work. She patted her leg, checking for the peaches. "I think you should leave those up here," I said. "Why?" she asked, frowning. "It's what I came here for. I bet you Mother Amoret pocketed some too if she saw any." "And I'll bet you she didn't," I shot back. "Well, I'm not giving these up." Another warning ding sounded. I didn't have time to argue. I began my descent. "Slow and steady," I said as much to myself as to her. Better a few minutes late than injured. Our group gathered in the shuttle, shared some unappetizing MREs, and then gave our impressions of the site. Mother Amoret went first. "I sense the legends I've heard about this place are true. even though the energy here is far quieter than I would have expected. But it's an uneasy quiet, like someone covered the top of a simmering volcano with a worn blanket to keep it from erupting. Leviathan sleeps, but fitfully. She continued, Sister Marta Anderson has been here. I strongly sense her spirit. She tried her best to quell the unease of many anxious ghosts, and she did a good job, considering. But it's only temporary. Decades ago, when that pipeline blew, something happened that has never happened before. Our poison and the wrath of the ancestors became one. What do you mean? Asked Tango. Actually, I'm fairly sure he knew exactly what she meant. He just wanted her to say it plain. When all those ex-slaves perished here, their pain was forever etched in the soil, Amaret explained. That's why no one here would eat the peaches. And then we poured our poisons on top of that, and somehow the two things combined to make something new. The process isn't complete, and bless Sister Anderson for attempting to slow its progress, but someday this beast will be born. Everyone inhaled sharply, everyone except Night. I actually thought I caught a wisp of a smile on her face, like she had been waiting for something like this to happen. I will not, Mother Amaret proclaimed, disturb the darkness brewing here to cast a spell. My righteous anger seems petty now. Not even Domers deserve what may be coming. And that's when it hit me. This place didn't exactly feel quiet. It felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for just the right moment to exhale. It felt like a cloud before a storm, bloated with rain. That should have been the end of it. Mother Amaret had spoken and she said the spell was off. Didn't matter what anyone else thought, even though we all had an opportunity to speak on our impressions. Mother Amaret knew what she was talking about. She led us in one final prayer. Then we split into our assigned shelters to sleep for a few hours before the flight home. Night and I decontaminated ourselves and climbed into the shuttle. I kept thinking about those peaches she'd stashed in her pocket, and I must have been thinking about them hard enough to disturb her because she kept swatting at the air in an attempt to swat my thoughts away. You heard Amaret, Night. Ditch the damn peaches. No way, she thought to me. I didn't fly through all that mist to go home empty-handed. We're not doing the spell. We don't know what kind of energy is growing here. You mean you guys aren't doing the fucking spell, she snapped. I found just what I wanted. God damn it, Night, I got you into this salon. And I took you on your little field trip, so I guess we're even. She retrieved the peaches from her pocket and set them on the control panel. Then she opened a hidden compartment under one of the pilot's chairs and pulled out a black satchel. From the satchel, she pulled a small vial of dark indigo liquid, 2 pocket hypos, and a piece of rubber tubing. I knew exactly what the liquid was. Blue sky. But it was several orders of magnitude stronger than the peacock blue bar piss variety. She'd either scored it on the black market or paid a chemist to whip up a batch especially for her. Normally, the only reason someone with gifts of her caliber would use blue sky is if they were a psychic for hire and working on a deadline. But even they wouldn't mess with stuff that potent, and they certainly wouldn't mainline the shit. That would crack your soul wide open, shatter it into a million pieces, never to be heard from again. What the fuck are you doing? I asked. Research, she replied, as she tied the piece of rubber around her arm and poked around for a vein. Well, I'd wish you'd save your research until after you fly us home, I said aloud. She replied by tuning me out completely. She examined the 3 peaches on the console, chose the one that was shaped like a baboon butt, and cut off a small piece with the switchblade she carried in her suit. Then she briefly closed her eyes, whispered a quick prayer to fate, and popped the piece into her mouth. She chewed it slowly, making a face as she did. I wondered, what did a cursed and slightly radioactive peach taste like? Was it bitter? Was it tough? Or was it preternaturally sweet? After she'd ingested the peach, she filled the pocket hypo and injected the blue sky. Since she was mainlining, the drug's effect was immediate. She leaned back in the chair and would have damn near flipped out of it if I hadn't caught her. I found myself on the floor, holding her limp body in my arms. Yeah, I did want to get up close and personal with her, but not like this. I've never mainlined blue sky. In fact, I make it a policy never to do anything stronger than bar piss, and I don't do that very often. My gift is too strong for that kind of foolishness. That's not a brag. It's just the truth. When you have the gift, the first thing you have to learn is how not to get overwhelmed by all the extra sensations. You learn not to hear everyone's stray thoughts when you ride the ferry, things like that. But blue sky puts the kibosh on your filters. Suddenly, it's second puberty all over again, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Night's lavender eyes looked almost black because her pupils were as large as saucers. She was breathing, but barely. I synced my breath with hers and established a casual link, strong enough to sense trouble, but weak enough to break easily if my soul needed to make a run for it. She wasn't seeing any visions yet. All I saw when I got behind her eyes was the shuttle's interior in blurry, soft focus. I could hear something in the distance, though, men's voices chanting and the rhythmic clink of hammers. A ghostly chain gang? Or the freedmen the Union soldiers sentenced to hard labor? Then suddenly, Night's body stiffened and her breathing grew labored. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a red light on my suit blinking, indicating a member of my party was in bodily trouble. All of our suits had one, and right now they would all be blinking in unison. I prayed no one else would notice it and come to the shuttle to check things out. That's just what I didn't need. Amoret would have read me the riot act about Night and the Peaches. Fortunately, no one came, but that didn't solve my immediate problem. Night was having a seizure, and since I was linked to her, I was starting to have one too. I willed my vital signs to slow. I imagined the fresh, metallic scent in the air after a thunderstorm. I saw myself as a bird taking refuge in the hurricane's eye. Anything to quell the tempest brewing in us. Night, I swear, if you die on me, I'm going to raise you up so I can kill your ass again. The threat seemed to work. Night's body relaxed, her breathing became closer to normal, and my head stopped feeling like it had been repeatedly tased. Also, the light on my suit stopped blinking. But we weren't out of the woods yet. The visions from the Peach were just beginning, and it was the full-spectrum haunting I'd been dreading. We lose ourselves in the body of a woman, so thirsty the inside of our mouths tastes like rust, so hungry our stomach has begun to eat itself. On the ground before us lay an infant, bloody and deformed, stillborn. Our fingers so thin and brittle, they look like twigs. We pray to Jesus, to the Father, to the sweltering sun they created, to let us die now. We look to the sky. It is milky white, no wind in the trees. Jump cut. We have landed in a different woman. Walking. There are many, carrying everything we own upon our backs. A few horses, bony and sick, lope beside us. Jump cut. Now we are lost in the body of a man who is hiking through the desert with his children. We hear water in the distance. Another man points ahead. A key, he says, but his accent is off, the harsh twang of a gringo. Do we trust him? We remember an old children's rhyme. Ophelia and her father sleeping underwater, dreaming of a land of milk and honey, while fat white cats are counting money. Hey, wait a damn minute. I managed to wrest myself away from the horrific montage. Something was terribly wrong. All of this didn't come from one Peach. The visions weren't even from the same geographical area or time. The first woman was a slave. The second was walking the Trail of Tears. The man was part of the great Central American migration at the turn of the century, just when the shattered states were showing their first cracks. When my father's people came. Holy crap, Night was a collector. She collected ghosts, digested them, and then stored them for later use. And who knows how long she'd been gathering energy from the darkest hauntings in history. That's when I realized. That firewall she'd erected wasn't to keep Tango out. It was to corral all that stuff in. But why? Did she get off on pain? Was this some hackneyed way to atone for Domer's sins? Truth was, I didn't have time to ponder the philosophical implications of it all, because Night was way past capacity. That final dose of blue sky had done it. All those restless ghosts were running amok, and soon they would drown her out. Then she'd be stark raving mad, and I'd have to try to get us home. Time for drastic action. I needed to eat some history. Night, I thought to her, can you hear me? No answer. I took a brief dip behind her eyes and realized it was useless. The visions were parading by so fast and furious. It was like watching white noise. Soon her vitals were going wild, and the warning light on our suits started blinking again. I laid her on the floor. Her lavender eyes were a study in raw fear, which was good. It meant there still was enough of her around to know to be afraid. I don't know how long you've been carrying that shit around, I said, but you're going to have to let some go. She groaned and made a sorry attempt to wiggle away, but she could barely move. No, honey, I said, frantically unzipping her out of her suit. You can't carry it for much longer. Yes, I can, she thought. Then she went stiff as a board. I tore off my suit, threw myself on top of her, then held on for dear life. We were skin to clammy skin, our hearts racing as one. I looked her dead in the eye. Give it to me, I said. She hesitated. She didn't want to give up any part of her collection. Give it to me, Knight, I pleaded, or you'll die. I ain't playing. Maybe I was crying by then. I really can't remember. All I know is that I've never been so scared in my life. She groaned again, then went limp. No, you don't. I kissed her, as a wave of ghosts crashed through me, more than I could swallow. But at least it relieved enough pressure for her to move. And move she did, grabbing onto me for dear life. We had sex, but it was like fucking on a raging battlefield as the dead watched. No love in it at all, or even lust. There was only desperation, food for hungry ghosts. We awoke in a puddle of our own sweat. Night was still groggy, hung over from blue sky and ghosts, so it fell on me to clean things up. I let her drift between sleeping and waking while I got washed and geared up. I didn't have much to say to her anyway. I went outside to the emergency shelters to check on the rest of the crew. Everyone was still asleep and snoring, dead to the world. Only then did I check the time. Just 6 o'clock a.m. Hard to believe all that happened before the crack of dawn. But it was good. It was still early because I had one important piece of business. Get rid of those damn peaches before Mother Amoret caught a whiff of them. Night was going to be pissed, but I didn't much care what she thought. She almost stranded us in the deep hinterlands. She didn't deserve a vote. I didn't walk far, just 200 feet from camp. I threw that mutant fruit in the direction of the sound of rushing water, chanting a banishing spell while I did. Then, I hoped it was over, though I still had to take care of myself. I'd swallowed a lot, my soul ached, but I figured I was strong enough to keep things in check until I got home. That's when it hit me. Suppose Night had staged this whole escapade as a test. Tango had said she wanted a partner in crime, someone as strong as she was. And despite the night of ghosts, Night had revealed herself to be plenty strong, once in a generation strong, in fact. If she hadn't tipped the scales with that blue sky, she would still be toting around that little shop of horrors, with none of us being the wiser. Most people's souls would have cracked under the strain. When I got back to the shuttle, Night had geared up and was in the midst of doing a pre-flight check. The satchel with the blue sky and paraphernalia was safely stashed in the secret compartment. You gonna be okay to fly? I asked. Yes, I'm fine, she replied, eyes glued to the console. That was some stunt you pulled last night. Listen, I know you're mad at me, but I don't feel like fighting right now. Okay, I'm not fighting, but I do want to let you know that you scared the shit out of me. And you did the one thing I warned you not to do. You put my friends in danger. Only then did she look at me. Don't be so melodramatic, Z. You could have flown this shuttle home. You would have saved your friends. Hell, even though you were madder than a snake at me, you saved my life. You placed too much faith in me, I said. She rose from the console, walked up to me, lifted my helmet visor, and placed her hand on my cheek. It was still humming from the night before, and I heard the ancestors whispering around us. I was still angry, and she scared me to my bones. But there was still something seductive about the dark magic we made together. Even though I knew I should have pushed her hand away, I didn't. I do not place too much faith in you, she said. I haven't placed enough. I see why Uncle Lily wanted you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just stupidly stared at her for who knows how long. I don't think you should come to the salon anymore, is what I finally said. Fair enough, she agreed, her hand still resting on my cheek. Was this a test? Nope, she replied, but what happened for a reason. That's when I pushed her hand away. At least I tried. But she caught me in some ninja tango move, and suddenly, our faces were inches apart. Ghost energy buzzed around us like a swarm of hungry mosquitoes. Yes, it was bone-chilling, but it was also electric. She kissed me, and for an instant, I was ready to give in to her sick fantasy. I thought we could rule the world. The trip back wasn't half as sick-making, thank God. I hung back with Tango where it was safe. Occasionally, Night would steal a glance at me from the pilot's chair, but I'd grip Tango's hand and close my eyes to avoid her gaze. What the hell did she do to you, Z? Tango thought to me. I don't want to talk about it, I replied, and I shut my mind like a steel trap. He didn't try to read me. He knew better. When we finally arrived in Crescent Region proper, Knight parked the shuttle in the 10th zone, and all us deep outsiders started trekking to our respective homes. Only then did Mother Emirette pull me aside. Oh crap, I thought. She's going to throw me out of the group, because I knew she sensed something big had gone down, and it wasn't good, and it was my fault. But Emirette surprised me. She wasn't pissed. Instead, she was worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm sorry," I said. "Sorry for what?" I didn't feel like telling her the whole story, a good part of which she probably knew anyway, so I just grabbed her hand and fed her images. "I see," she said, "but I say you did the best you could, and you're right, she is strong, but you are stronger. Then, keep an eye on her for me, will you?" "What?" I asked, flabbergasted. Because at that point, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to see Knight again. I mean, she was hot, but that night I spent with her was far from the most pleasurable I've had. "You can handle her, so you watch what she does." "Why?" Emirette smiled. "Because I know you relish a challenge, and you just might have to save us again."
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.